morning. This is the Gresham Area Chamber of Commerce, and you are with the Business and Leaders Luncheon. We have a great panel with us today. I'm Lynn Snodgrass. I'm the CEO of the Gresham Area Chamber. I want to thank our presenting sponsors. Sponsors are very important to all events, no matter what you do. Our presenting sponsor is Columbia Bank, the Boeing Company, and Portland General Electric, and we so appreciate their continued support for the Leaders Luncheon. We also want to thank Gresham Barlow School District, who is a stakeholder sponsor, great partnership with education and business in our community. And of course, MetroEast Community Media. Keith is online here and he's going to be recording, and then make sure that you can see it again and view it again later. So thank you to all of our partners. By the way, you can check the MetroEast Community Media through the cable channels to find it when this is rebroadcast, or it'll be on the Chamber website. So the great luncheon topic that we have today is with three of our very valuable public servants. I want to thank them for being flexible in dealing with all the last minute changes from Persimmon to online. Sorry, I can't fix you lunch, and no, I didn't send you lunch, so I owe you lunch. And I'm sure you can call me on it. With us today are Senator Chris Gorsek, Representative Hudson, and Representative Williams. So what I'm going to do is introduce the speakers one at a time, and then I've asked them to tell us all the highlights of what happened during the 2021 session and share with us any thoughts that they might have about what was done or what wasn't completed from their own personal perspective. After each have finished with their 12-minute time, there will be opportunity for questions, for you to ask them questions. But you need to put those questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And then Angela will monitor those questions, and as time permits, each of the elected officials will answer them. I'm going to monitor the time so that the public servants don't overstep their 12-minute boundary, give or take a little bit. Having been a politician in the past, I know that we have a tendency to talk a lot, as I'm doing right now. So we will conclude our luncheon at 12:30 sharp to respect everybody's time. With that being said, let's get started. Our first speaker today is Senator Gorsek. This is his first year as a senator. Graduate of University of Oregon, and he is a teacher at Mount Hood Community College. His subject matter includes geography and criminal justice. As a former Portland police officer, he has a perfect platform for the legislative committee that he co-chaired during the session, Public Safety Subcommittee of Ways and Means. And Ways and Means is a very powerful committee in the legislature. He was also on the Education and Transportation Joint Ways and Committees of Joint Ways and Means. So that being said, Senator Gorsek, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be here, virtually or not. I spent 4 terms in where Representative Hudson is now, in House District 49. And this, you mentioned this is my first term as a state senator, Senate District 25, and it's almost all of Gresham, Troutdale, Wood Village, Fairview, and a little tiny slice of Portland. So it's a privilege to be able to serve both in the House and the Senate. And while I think a lot of times people focus on, and we'll talk about some of this, people focus on what we do when we're in session in Salem, super important for people to also remember that anytime a constituent has a problem or an issue that we might be able to help with, or we might be able to find who can help you, and I'm sure Lynn remembers this well, people should definitely reach out to us. The same is true of our federal delegation. So we're problem solvers as well as working on bills and legislation in this Senate and the House. So as Lynn mentioned, I have had the honor of being the co-chair with Representative Janine Salmon of the subcommittee of Joint Ways and Means for Criminal Justice. It's actually something that, as you heard, I did as a line police officer in Portland many years ago. And I've been teaching that subject at Mount Hood Community College for almost 25 years. I also teach geography, and sometimes people go, well, hey, wait a minute, is there a connection between criminal justice and geography? But actually, things happen somewhere. And so figuring out why things happen where they do and what we might do, especially in terms of crime prevention, really is connected. And so it's more relative than you think. And as a police officer, you know, they chopped up the city into districts. And so geography has always been kind of a subtext to what I've done. So also joint transportation. And I don't know if you noticed, but we did manage to pass a companion to the original 2017. I don't know if that was, I think it was a House bill that was the big infrastructure project for Oregon. So this past term, I think it was 3055, and we passed that as a way of enhancing and moving forward with what we started in 2017. As with most legislation, not everybody was pleased by every aspect of it. And there's certainly some concerns among some folks that it was highway heavy, but it really is an important step in trying to get the highway issues taken care of, and then hopefully doing more things with rail and bus, bike, ped, all of those things. So I see this as kind of an ongoing issue. And in fact, just the last few weeks, we formed a rail caucus that's in both the House and the Senate, and is bipartisan and is designed to work with the Department of Transportation to enhance our activities both for freight and passenger rail. And also to work with Washington's. They have a caucus that they've had for about 6 or 8 years, and we'll actually, again, I'll be doing it virtually at the Penwar conference, and that's going to be a rail component in the afternoon for about 4 or 5 hours. So I think it's Pacific Northwest Economic Region. And so we've had a lot of interesting conversations recently with both some of the legislators in Washington and some of the organizers of the event. And I get to speak along with one of my Washington colleagues about the kind of process of forming these caucuses and what they may be able to do. So, and fortunately, we've had a good response from the Department of Transportation. So I look forward to us being able to really come up with some really great ideas in terms of moving freight and passengers in the future. We passed a number of pieces of legislation. I was able to get Senate Bill 418 passed. Senate Bill 418 was, it's actually what I see as the third in a series of juvenile justice bills designed to make sure, it's not designed to get the police, but is designed to make sure that everybody is on an even playing field. And so what we've had in the past was a situation where we experienced nationally kids that often have falsely confessed to crimes. And part of the problem with that was that police officers were able to legally were able to lie to them about the evidence that they had against them, or what, you know, their co-conspirators or alleged co-conspirators had said. And so what this bill basically says is you, if you're a police officer and you have a juvenile in custody, interviewing is just fine. Actually, in that case, it's an interview is just a general discussion. Interrogation is what we're talking about here, where we're trying to get a confession. And in this case, the police officer can do an interrogation after, of course, Miranda. They just can't lie to get a confession, which we've frequently seen has led to some really serious problems. And we got a chance to work with the Innocence Project and a number of other stakeholder groups. And the great thing was that the law enforcement folks came along with us. And so the chiefs and sheriffs, among many others, were also interested in passing this legislation. And the great thing is it doesn't impede anything. It just makes sure that we're really getting the kid that really did something wrong. And as we all know, the concern these days is to try and not bring kids into the system unless it's really necessary, because of all the impacts it has on them for the future. We did another bill, Senate Bill 497, which was directed at domestic violence folks. So a lot of times we have folks that are convicted of misdemeanor domestic violence, things like assault in the fourth degree, which is a misdemeanor, and things like that. The problem is that, as we know from the research, many times these sorts of problems can escalate. And so it's really important to have some monitoring of these folks, even though they're not felons. And the state has tended to focus supervision on felons. So with domestic violence cases, we will now see supervision of folks that are in that misdemeanor category, in the hopes that we might stave off some of the more serious problems down the road. Unfortunately, I'm sure there are times when everybody has done something that they should not have done with their spouse. But when we're talking about long-term kind of a cyclical pattern of domestic violence that is building, this will help, we hope, in reducing some of that threat. We also did one, I'll bet you've heard about this one. This is the catalytic converter bill. I have to tell you, I've been in the legislature since 2013. I've never received as many media inquiries about any of the bills that I've done as I have with catalytic converters. Catalytic converters, as you know, are these wonderful little devices that attach to your exhaust system to keep pollutants contained rather than being released into the atmosphere. Unfortunately, they're made out of some substantially precious metals. And people have been finding that one of the quick, easy ways to make a buck is to steal these things and then take them down to the local junkyard and turn them in for money. So we worked with the district attorney's office to create a bill that said you have to have parameters around the recycling of these things. And you can't, we're hoping that you can't just continue this process of just going down to the local junkyard and getting money. So we worked with, it's really amazing. The idea was not to try and ramp up the punishment. The idea was, and it's very much classic crime prevention, was to make it harder for the act to occur in the first place. So taking, in this case, we're trying to take away the market for these things and get to a point where not as many people's catalytic converters are being stolen. Unfortunately, it takes a little bit of time to ramp everything up. And so there was no emergency clause placed on this bill, and it will come into force January 1. And I know we got an inquiry the other day from KGW, and I'm sure others are interested in this, that, why didn't it have an emergency clause? But that's really the idea. When working with all of these groups, it takes some time to set the system into place. So
Senator Gorsek,
yes.
You've got a minute and a half.
Aha, see? And what's worse, Lynn, is when you have both a teacher and a politician, it makes us really talkative. At any rate, I'm going to go ahead then and wrap this up. But I tell you, we did some really, I think we did some great stuff. We worked on a lot of issues around housing also, and homelessness, which we know is a continuing serious problem. And helping tenants who are in danger of being forced out of their homes, but also helping landlords cover some of those costs. So thank you very much, Lynn, and I will end here.
Well, are you going to give your 46 seconds to the next person?
Oh, sure. Why not?
No, I'm kidding. All right. Cancel 12. Okay. Thank you, Senator Gorsek. I didn't know about some of those bills. You definitely have a passion. And the catalytic converter, keep working on those because targeting on that one element is only one piece. Throw the book at them louder and longer if they get caught taking them. That would also help. So.
Well, and the worst part of it is it's very, well, I shouldn't say this, but it's very easy to steal them. It only
I know.
takes a couple of minutes.
Yep.
And if it's the middle of the night, no one's around, they hack them off, they're gone.
Middle of the day, Cascade Athletic Club. Somebody was in doing her 20-minute workout and she came back and her catalytic converter, middle of the day, was taken from her car. So it's not a middle of the night, it's not dark of the night, and it's not at your home. So anyway.
A lot of burglaries happen that way too. We think of those as nighttime, but many times they're daytime.
Yeah. So we've just talked you 47 seconds. So I'm not going to play favorites and give it to either one of the representatives.
Okay, fair enough.
So the next speaker is a freshman legislator, Representative Zach Hudson. He's a high school teacher at Reynolds and a former Troutdale city councilor. Representative Hudson has a wide range of committee assignments this last session. He was the chair of Agriculture and Natural Resource Committee, and he was on the Education Committee as well as Joint Ways and Means General Government as a subcommittee. So Representative Hudson, the floor is yours. 12 minutes and 30 seconds are ready for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to sharing what my freshman session was like and the things that I worked on. So I have been a teacher around East County schools for about 15 years now. Most recently, I was at Reynolds High School. I've also taught at Mountain Hood Community College, Gresham High School, Corbett High School, and I'm actually going to be starting at Cedar Ridge Middle School in Sandy in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to that. Great. Well, so I wanted to make sure that as I was coming in to my first term in the legislature, I wasn't, didn't want to decide I was going to, rewrite everything, change everything, and shake everything up. I really wanted to learn how the process worked, and I really saw myself as part of a team that was working to get good legislation through. So both my work on committees and then working with other legislators and other advocates on particular bills, I was really happy to see a lot of the really important things that the House and then the Senate were able to pass this session. We were able to pass legislation that kept people in their homes, legislation that got Oregon on a path to clean energy, bills that promoted racial justice, improved our natural disaster response, helped to keep prescription drug costs down, and to make education more inclusive, and many other really important issues like that. I did end up passing one bill of my own. That was House Bill 3026, and it directs the Department of Motor Vehicles to issue an ID free of charge to individuals who are unhoused. The reason for this is just how important it is to have an official ID if you are trying to get back on your feet, if you're trying to find housing, get back into employment, to find services, to set up a bank account, things like that. It actually turns out that Lily Morgan, a Republican representative from Grants Pass, had almost the exact same idea for a bill, and so we combined ours and co-sponsored bipartisan legislation, and it found great support in the legislature, and look forward to seeing that being one step of many toward helping our neighbors experiencing houselessness. Another important aspect of this session was providing funding to districts and allotting funding to districts. So along with Senator Gorsek and Representative Ruiz and others, I helped secure funding for Reynolds School-Based Health Center, a wonderful thing for the neighborhood and the community to provide health services, not only to students, but also to families, especially low-income families who would have trouble finding, for instance, dental care otherwise. So that's exciting to see. Also, important community organizations like La Plaza Esperanza, things like Graydon Sports Park in Gresham, and local gang diversion initiatives as well. We also got to distribute federal American Rescue Plan Act dollars within our districts. And so, again, I prioritized affordable housing, specifically renovation and rededication of Section 8 housing in Aldercrest apartments, which are up by Clear Creek Middle School. And so just trying to secure affordable housing and develop new opportunities for affordable housing, such as through a grant to Habitat for Humanity as well. So let's see, the session is over now. Now that we're in the interim, I'm working on following up on those funding initiatives, making sure that the money gets to the right place and in the right amount of time. We're getting ready for the short session in February and prepping the bills that we're going to introduce. We also have legislative days coming up. And so as potentially, I will continue as chair of the House Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee. Committees can always be reassigned, but that's what I'm anticipating. So we might be looking at issues such as water and drought, wildlife crossings, wildlife tax credits, pesticide use in schools, and other important things that might come up before that committee. And then, of course, we're working with the community and with constituents. We have a chance this week to meet with the East County Food Pantry, who's doing amazing work in providing direct food assistance to our neighbors locally who are food insecure. Of course, we're helping constituents navigate difficult bureaucratic problems if they come to us and have a way that we can help. We're working closely with housing and houselessness advocates with the county and metro and local cities to try to coordinate our approach to that issue as well. I'm actually very optimistic after having spoken to many different local leaders about the work that we're going to be able to do to help transition unhoused people into stable housing, to clean up unauthorized campsites, and to afford to build out the supply of affordable housing locally. So that's what we're working on now, and looking forward to also answering any questions you have.
Well, thank you, Representative Hudson. I did a great job in recapping, and congratulations on a chairmanship. The viewing audience may not understand, but being a freshman and being assigned a leadership role as a chair is high regard. It's highly coveted, and it shows the confidence. How Representative Hudson got to that was as vice chair to begin with, but the speaker clearly saw leadership skills in Representative Hudson and kept him in that committee and moved him from co-chair to chair. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
My experience in appointing chairs when I was speaker, it's not fun because you appoint one and there's 58 other people that are mad at you. So the fact that Speaker Kochek saw a real treasure in your abilities was good. So that being said, we're going to go on to the third and final representative that's with us today. Our final speaker is Representative Anna Williams. Representative Williams has engaged with the chamber in multiple venues, and I've appreciated her constant outreach. She's a social worker, another former teacher. I don't think you're teaching right now, but another teacher among us, and a parent who lives in Hood River. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to Representative Williams, and she's focused on being a mother and dealing with mother issues as well as all the other public servant, business, et cetera issues. So adding that to your workload is, I respect that a lot. She's a parent who lives in Hood River, not here in Gresham, so she's got another different perspective on what we deal with right here. It's no surprise that she was the chair of the Human Services Committee during session. She also was on the Ag and the Agricultural and Natural Resource Committee with Representative Hudson and the Joint Ways and Means Subcommittee for Human Services. So Representative Williams, this is her second term as a legislator, and it's now your turn to share what happened during session from your perspective and anything you want to share with us.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I actually am teaching as well right now.
Oh.
I teach master's level social work students, and I teach social welfare policy, which is an excellent way to hold yourself accountable as a policymaker to doing that work with ethics. A lot of what we talk about is, how you identify a problem and how you identify stakeholders, kind of all the work that we do. But I really focus in with my students on the budgeting piece and on the assessment and evaluation. Is the policy working, and how do we make sure that it's working? Which I think is something I push for a lot also in my elected role, that we don't just make rules, we have to actually make sure they're working and continue to tweak them and hear from the community about how they're being affected. If it's not working the way we intended, then we have to fix it. That's also our job. So this year, being chair of House Human Services was a really interesting role to play. There was a lot of overlap between what we did in our committee, what the Housing Committee was doing, trying to keep people out of homelessness during COVID, working with the Healthcare Committee around COVID precautions in in-home care situations or for older adults or people with disabilities. So lots of back and forth and trying to break down some of the silos that you see in the committee structure where we're really dealing with the bill that other people really should have a lot of input on. So we did joint hearings between committees. We heard the same bill in multiple committees so that we could get different questions asked from people who had different expertise. So that was a really interesting opportunity, I think, that we could do a little more easily because of the remote nature of session. Some folks really disliked the remote nature of session. And there's a lot that we didn't get, a lot of crossover and sort of cross-pollination that we might have seen if we'd been running into each other in the hallways and seeing constituents and lobbyists and that kind of thing. But there were some benefits too. And so I'm hopeful that we can evaluate what worked well and keep some of that stuff as we go back to the in-person, more traditional nature for future sessions. So I had 4 priority bills that passed. House Bill 2593 is the voluntary search and rescue funding that I've been working on since I was elected. So this will allow people to just buy a little search and rescue card at a place where you might buy your fishing license or your hunting license, or at REI, outdoor retailers. And that money will go to the Oregon State Sheriff's Association to fund training and collaboration between the sheriff's departments and the volunteers who do a lot of the specialized work on search and rescue. Organizations like REI have said that they want to figure out ways to provide discounts to cardholders so that there's a benefit beyond just being a good person for purchasing those cards. House Bill 2914 established March as Arab American Heritage Month every year in Oregon. That was related to an intern in my office who was on the board of the Arab American Cultural Center and really seeing ongoing anti-Arab sentiments in Oregon, wanting to honor former Governor Vic Atia and all of the other Arab Americans who have made significant impact in Oregon. House Bill 2918 creates an online database of publicly owned surplus lands that might be appropriate for affordable housing development. So affordable housing developers can get on this website managed by DLCD and see, oh, ODOT's thinking of getting rid of this property. I'm going to start doing my background research on it, see if it's eligible for the tax match, see if it has appropriate infrastructure that we might want to purchase that land for affordable housing development. So that came from the affordable housing development community really saying we need more time than what we've got from the state right now so that we can be more effective with the resources that we have. And House Bill 3304 is a bill that requires ODOT to report on how well they're working with communities when they're doing improvement projects that on ODOT-owned properties that serve as the main street. Oftentimes they'll put signs where they're in front of businesses and you can't really tell that that's the entrance to the business, or they'll make things less walkable because they're trying to focus on moving freight through as quickly as possible. And so they said that they have a new strategy called the Blueprint for Urban Design, and this bill actually asks them to submit input from the affected communities to let us know if that blueprint is working better. And if not, then we'll come back and look at other tweaks that might need to be made for livability in around ODOT projects and for business development in those communities as well. A couple of other bills that were not my personal bills, but I co-sponsored with other people and did a lot of the development on. House Bill 2575 provides trauma-informed training for law enforcement, so they understand the impacts of trauma on the folks that they're working with, but also on their peers and themselves, and can understand when it might be helpful to seek support for that. House Bill 3344 changes OLCC retail agents used to have to file their paperwork weekly. We changed it to quarterly, or to monthly, I'm sorry, because we'll still get the same amount of revenue, but we'll decrease the amount of administrative overhead for these small businesses by 3/4, that they don't have to file the same piece of paperwork 4 times in a month when it's really not necessary that they do that. So we're trying to look at what was COVID showing us. There's too much reporting work and on some of these small businesses. So we're trying to create some business relief there. And then, there was just money everywhere this year. So a lot of what I did was focus on bringing in funds to the communities that I serve and to the constituencies that I stand for. So we got $6 million allocated to the Children's Advocacy Centers, which do child abuse intervention and investigations. That was a big one for me that I've been working for since I started. $10 million toward expanding family treatment court. So this goes in line with Measure 110, where if you have if you're having a problem with your parenting because of an addiction, that instead of going to jail, which obviously creates further parenting problems, you're mandated to go into treatment, and you get a case manager that will help walk through you. So you get an opportunity for a second chance before you go into this punishment place. And that is a sort of a staged implementation. We're trying it in some communities to see if it's effective before we go statewide with it. So that's why only $10 million. Got a bunch of money for different bridges. So the Hood River Bridge got $5 million. There's 2.4 million for Cascade Locks. We used the American Rescue Plan Act money to invest in the community colleges that serve our district. Again, looking at what was COVID doing to our communities, we need people to retrain for the new jobs that they're going to come back into. We need to make sure we have business development opportunities. So for Mount Hood Community College, we are helping pay for a cover for the outdoor Olympic pool, which was a chamber priority, I understand. And we're also helping build a center where they'll have their student clubs and some student supports all in one place, so that if you're going in to stop by the Native American Cultural Student Center, you can also stop and see if there's any grants available to help you pay for college and things like that, so that students don't have to walk all over campus to find the one office that they need. For Columbia Gorge Community College, we're investing in a Spanish language GED program, which their early childhood education department said was necessary. You have to have a GED to be a certified childcare provider in Oregon, and we need Spanish language childcare providers, but we don't have a Spanish language GED program in the area. So this is to create a pipeline where people can get into that certified childcare space, and a feasibility study for an ag tech study to look at how can we use drones better in our agricultural space. And we're also investing in the childcare center itself, so building a physical space for childcare. A few other things that I dug into was the Senate Bill 755, which was the bill that implemented Measure 110. That is a statewide behavioral health and addiction treatment policy. What I did there was really look at what was the voter mandate, what resources do we actually have existing in communities already, and how do we get to where we need to be. So some of the things that were in the original bill maybe would work in Gresham and Portland, but would not work in Eastern Oregon because we simply don't have the resources that we were saying people needed to have access to within 24 hours. So really looking at where do we need to be filling those gaps and how did we need to tweak that policy and make the funding work with that so that we can actually do that statewide in a way that's sort of culturally appropriate depending on where you live. You may feel more comfortable getting services in one way if everyone you know is a service provider. When you live in Eastern Oregon, you're probably going to know the people in your community that are providing those treatment services. So that needs to be set up a little bit differently. And House Bill 2411, which allows broadband cable to be laid wherever transportation projects are happening, which will speed up the expansion of broadband and access to broadband for everybody in our state, which again, we know was kind of a problem before COVID, but we felt it and saw it very directly during the last year and a half of doing Zoom meetings all the time. So I could talk more.
You've got 2 minutes left, 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
Okay. I guess another bill that I worked on pretty closely was Senate Bill 762, which was the wildfire bill. Again, looking at what do our communities in our district need? What were they asking for? And how do we make sure that we're balancing clear statewide standards with local input and local control? So what does it mean in Gresham to look at the wild and urban interface? Probably not much, right? You guys aren't necessarily right in the forest, but in Hood River, in Corbett, we've got a lot of folks who are going to need to be very involved in that conversation. So making sure that their voices were heard at the table as well. The last thing I will say is that redistricting is coming up soon, and we need to hear from all of you where those lines are drawn. Who are your customers? What does your base look like? How do we make sure that we're keeping things together within Gresham so that you have good representation? Go to OregonLegislature.gov/redistricting and all the timelines. There's remote testimony times, there's meetings, there's maps you can get in and draw and say, this is where I think the boundary should be based on how I get to work or where my school's boundary lines are or whatever, so that we're able to really consider everything that you all think is important as we're finalizing those maps. And those maps have to go to the governor by September 27th.
So you'll have a special session to deal with that in order
starting on the 20th. Yeah.
Okay. Are you on the redistricting committee?
I am not. No, but my district is a little weird. We're the only district in the state that has urban, rural, frontier, and suburban kind of all in one district. And so it's important to me that all those different voices are heard and that maybe a district that is focused on different communities makes more sense, so that if urban folks have urban representation. Not that I don't want to represent you all, but I want you to be represented by the right person.
Right. And I don't think people understand how important redistricting is. And none of the representatives or the senators that are with us today have been through this process. It only happens once every 10 years. Senator Gorsek was there for 4, so that's 8 years. This is his 9th, so he wasn't involved in it at the last time it happened. But redistricting, I'm shocked at how the district that I represented 20 years ago does not exist. The people are still there, but they're scattered every place else. They've got 4 or 5 different people, and so districting, communities, et cetera, it is important. So thank you, Representative Williams, for bringing that up. The process is that the legislature will pass or not pass the work that has been done with the committee. Then the governor has a chance to accept it or not. And then if it's not accepted, then it goes to another power, and that would be the Secretary of State. Eventually they'll ask me, and I will draw the lines all by myself here at my desk. And don't worry about it. It's all going to be fine. That's not true. All right. So it's time for questions. Before, so Angela, if you could get those ready, but I wanted to talk about just 2 quick things. Representative Williams brought up the fact that there was some funding that came through the legislature that went to Mount Hood Community College for the swimming pool. It is a very high priority to the chamber, not because of the swimming pool, but because of the regional asset for revenue, because if there's a cover on the swimming pool at Mountain Community College, we can then get back and continue to have national tournaments there that brings in revenue through tourism. And we were rocking in that world. Water polo competitions from all over the United States were coming to Gresham. They were staying in our hotels, they were buying at our restaurants. But the fact that the cover is not there only gives us a summer season. Well, summer seasons aren't as desirable for the hotels as the winter seasons are. So thank you very much for making movement in that direction. It is an economic driver here. It's not just a swimming pool for safe swimming, although that's very important as well. So thank you. All of you were participated in that. A question about the February session. I was told that it was going to be virtual, not in person. Is that accurate? Do you know?
Well, based on what I've heard so far, I think I'd say it's up in the air.
Okay.
Prior to the Delta variant explosion, really, the plan was for it to be an in-person session.
Okay.
But with all of the things that have come along in the last few weeks, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work. The one thing, though, that what we've consistently done is that all of the committee work has been virtual, but we've all been on the floor to actually pass legislation. So question is, will we continue to do that? Will the building itself be open? There's a lot of things that really are yet to be resolved.
I was told that the decision was made because of the construction, didn't have anything to do with COVID. And I'm asking the question selfishly because I love doing the Leadership Academy for the Chamber.
Sure.
And the highlight of the whole year for the students is the trip to Salem. Well, it's not a whole lot of fun to sit on the steps outside the Capitol for 8 hours. We want to get in the building and be able to watch you work and have other access to the marble walls, the marble floors, and just the feeling of what you get, even the door handles. I mean, everything is amazing there. So I was just curious.
Yeah.
Are any of you on the emergency board?
I am not.
No. Okay. No. Okay. Because that was my other option. Maybe we could schedule the Leadership Academy to come down during emergency board if they were going to meet, and then see the Capitol and all that. So those were selfish reasons, and I've got all my questions answered. So Angela, do we have any questions in the queue?
We have one question. It's coming from James. He's thanking all three of you for your time today and representing our community in Salem. He asked if you can share your thoughts on the legislative priorities in continued funding for support of unfinished learning for students in our K through 12 schools.
Okay, who would like to tackle that first? It's going to be a question for all three of you. Does she need to read it again?
I can see it in the chat here.
Okay, good.
Take a stab at responding. Well, so this session, Oregon made historic investments in education funding. This was more money dedicated to education funding than in any previous year. I would still love to see it be more. We're always balancing priorities for funding for education against everything else, every other priority that we need in the state. And so we have to weigh everything very carefully. But I'm encouraged by the amount that we did invest this year and next session or next biennium. I think we need to ask for more because this is such an important thing for us to continue funding. As far as continued funding for unfinished learning for students in our K-12, I'm wondering if that is citing, for instance, students who are behind because of the difficulties and disrupted learning from the COVID pandemic. And if that's the case, I believe that the Student Success Act is giving quite a lot of money that gives school districts flexibility to use it in targeted ways. And I am hoping that districts decide to use it to prioritize the students who found themselves falling behind. It is very much up to districts how they choose to use that money that's made available to them, but that would definitely be a priority that I would see among districts and how to choose to use that funding.
Also during the summer, and it was championed by people like Senator Dembro, a lot of money was put forward for programs during the summertime to help some of those students kind of catch up. So there has been some work, but as Representative Hudson pointed out, there's still a lot that needs to be done. And especially for students who did not have adequate access to online learning.
Yeah, I'll just add to that there, as Rep. Hudson and Senator Gorsek kind of already mentioned, there was a significant increase in terms of funding for summer schools, for additional learning opportunities. I know the school districts in our legislative district had the highest number of summer school students that they've ever had before, and that those additional funds were approved by the legislature. I expect we'll continue to see more of that. Unfortunately, we're not done with disrupted learning related to COVID. As we're coming back into the school year, we're really, trying for 5 days a week, full day care. But we're going to have to see how the Delta variant feels about that. And so we're going to have to continue to have ongoing conversations about where the gaps are and how the state will continue to step up and fund what the resources are we need to fill those gaps. I think there's a strong commitment on behalf, I can speak for sure on the House side, but I've seen it on the Senate side as well, to continuing to prioritize our students and making sure that as they're coming out of school, they're ready for the next step, whether that's trade school, whether that's going directly into the workforce, or whether that's post-secondary education. So that is going to be a very loud conversation that we're continuing to have to meet the students' needs across the state.
That's great. This is not meant to be a gotcha, but there's a big uproar this last week about Senate Bill 744 and about the graduation, all that. And oftentimes when a bill like that comes about, and we're not going to debate the bill, it's passed and it's in there, but sometimes bills like that take pressure off. And what we were just discussing was, getting learning going and the unfinished learning and all that kind of stuff. But something like that takes a little bit of the pressure away because, well, it's not going to count. The graduation things aren't going to count. So do you think that might work against some of the pressure you want to put on making sure that learning continues and that the funding comes forward?
Well,
or not. I don't know the background of it all, but
go ahead.
My husband is a high school math teacher, and so he's being directly affected by this bill. So what Senate Bill 744 really does is we're just getting rid of the Common Core standardized testing. Right. That was required for graduation. You still have to pass your classes and demonstrate you can do math at an 11th grade level and read at an 11th grade level. And so what we have seen is that the pressure of standardized testing does not improve student learning outcomes. And so what the intention was, remove this false pressure that actually prevents students from focusing on learning the content, but really focuses their anxiety on test performance, and give ourselves more time to actually catch up that unfinished learning and really make sure that what they are learning meets the standards for graduation. So it was a good idea. I think it's been kind of misconstrued and misinterpreted, but the intention is that we actually have more time to catch up on that missed learning.
So the pressure can still be there is the point that I was trying to make.
High standards are still there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
And what it does is it takes us back to, I believe it's pre-2012. Back in the old days. Back in the old days, that's right. Plus, it for me, it returns us to what we do at the college level, which is we go through, we teach our class, we do all of the assignments and the testing that's relative to that class. And then the question is, does the student pass that? And these summative tests are just adding, I think, some pretty substantial roadblocks. And you might have students that passed everything but can't get past the test.
Oh,
So it's definitely, I think it's a hindrance, and so I'm very supportive of this move. It's not dumbing anything down. I see all these things on Facebook, and they're attacking the governor, and it's not at all. The standards are still, as Representative Williams said, the standards are still there, and I'm sure Representative Hudson, would agree with that as well.
great. So Angela, is there another question or any comments in the chat that need to be passed on?
There is no more questions. However, there is a thanks and an offer from Jordan Ely with Gresham Barlow School District to be a resource to all three of you. So please check out the chat box for his contact information.
If you don't know him, he's the CFO of Gresham Barlow School District, has a small school district experience, large school district experience, and he is Representative Williams. He's in your legislative district. So recently, he lives in Sandy now. So, homegrown, locally owned.
Lynn, he's brand new. Is that right?
He is. Well, no, he's not brand new. He took Mike Schofield's place a year and a half ago. But you know what it's like. The first year of anything, you're just getting to know everybody, relationships, and all that. So he was very equipped day one. Look out, because this is year two. Very well known and a great resource for a lot of reasons. And he's sincere too. So if you can reach out or need to reach out to him, be sure and do that. Okay. Angela, anything else?
No, that was it.
Okay, great. This was fabulous. I learned a lot. I'm a little bit of a political junkie in a good way, not a bad way. It's not addictive. I don't need help, but it's always fun to get to know people who give their time. This is not a high-paying position. It's not necessarily rewarding either, because there's so many gaps between the success stories. And it's hard work. It's hard work because you represent hundreds of opinions, and not just within your legislative district. It's outside too, that people who may not have a relationship with their own local representative are seeking you out, or their own senator, they may be seeking you out. And you're all of Oregon, and all of Oregon relies on your wisdom, each and every one of you. So I want to thank the sponsors today, our Columbia Bank, Portland General Electric, the Boeing Company, Gresham Barlow School District, and MetroEast Community Media. Appreciate your continued support. I want to also thank you, Representative Hudson. Good job on your first year. Thank you for being here today. Senator Gorsek, good job being a senator for the first year. That's wonderful. Appreciate your long service. And Representative Williams, as always, I respect you and so appreciate you being available to be here today. Watch closely to see if our next Business and Leaders Luncheon is in person or Zoom. Our topic is toll roads, so you might want to come. ODOT's going to do a great presentation. We'll be getting the most recent updates on what is happening in our area. Now, something may not be happening right downtown Gresham, but if it's happening in downtown Portland, it affects us getting through there, our commerce, etc. So it's going to be a great topic. If we are in person, you need to register. It was great last month to be among tables safely, having lunch and coffee with our friends at Table Decorations. I mean, the energy in the room was so fun, but it was very healthy and very safe. And nobody has got COVID because of it. So we'll play it by ear for next month. So have a wonderful rest of your week, all of you that are watching, and to our panelists, thank you again so much. Stay healthy and stay busy. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.